Is your team spiraling out of control this offseason? Dabo Swinney has made Clemson a no-drama university. We'll talk about it right here on Locked on Clemson.
You are Locked on Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Tiger fans? Morgan Thomas here, Clemson fan, Clemson grad, host and producer of Locked on Clemson, part-time host and producer over on 105.5 FM The Roar. Thank you so much for making Locked on Clemson your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you're new here, hit that like and subscribe button so you never miss an episode. We're dropping fresh Clemson takes Monday through Friday every single week. You know how we do here on Locked on. And you can also follow me over on X at the Morgan T Show to keep the conversation going. Today, we have a ton to talk about and a lot about the drama that's happening outside of Clemson and why Clemson is able to avoid that. Alabama is having a little bit of a quarterback problem and some drama there. Miami's obviously having some NIL chaos and drama over there. Lane Kiffin is even in the mix, and Dabo Swinney comes out and talks about the Super League and his prediction, which honestly, if you know anything about me, I also have felt like this is the way college football is going. We're going to get into it, so let's get it going. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. All right, so segment one, Clemson's culture and Alabama's culture. Now, I recently read an article from NFL insider Tom Placero, or I think that's the way you say it, but Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe seems to have been essentially pushed out the door by his own teammates to go into the NFL. The rumor is that the skill players were threatening to hit the transfer portal if Jalen Milroe actually returned for another season because of how inconsistent he was and how much he was reluctant to fully embrace being a running quarterback. He wanted to stay being a pocket passer. Now, Milroe, a guy who led Alabama to, an SEC title game, is in the NFL draft as we speak. I don't know if he's been drafted quite yet, but he's probably one of the next up on the board. But it seems as if maybe he didn't want to go into the NFL draft in some capacity, but the locker room now turned on him and said, "We don't want you back." And that kind of got me thinking. Now, this is not a Clemson article at all, but what if this was the way Clemson was going? What if this story was something that was happening under Dabo Swinney's watch? Now, I don't think that this is something that could ever happen under Dabo Swinney. But my first thought is, Cade Klubnick hasn't been the most likable quarterback. Now, he's been a likable person. I don't think anybody dislikes Cade as a person, as a human being, as a young man. He seems like he checks all the perfect boxes to be exactly what you would want in a football player, in a teammate, in, a nephew, whatever it may be, in a son. I don't know. But it seems like Cade Klubnick is kind of, perfect in a lot of ways. He's a good guy. But he has had his share of, frustrations with the fan base and with myself as well, much like Jalen Milroe probably frustrated the Alabama fan bases on his side of the ball or over there in Alabama. It seems as if, Cade could have been under the same kind of scrutiny. I mean, there were times where, what did we call him? We called him like a little puppy who, was cute and cuddly and would do fun things and would be great, but also would pee on the rug. We thought about that when it came to Cade Klubnick. He would make big time mistakes that kind of really frustrate you. And like, why did you do that? You've had such a good week, Cade, but now you're doing this. And, so there've been years of some growing pains with Cade Klubnick, and you see a lot of the potential that he's had and a lot of, some of the talent that he has and those big playability. But Cade still hasn't won like a marquee game yet. He hasn't beat a massive team He has 2 ACC championships under his belt, but he hasn't really beaten big time teams like he hasn't beaten. I mean, when he won the ACC championship game, one was under North Carolina, who really was kind of in shambles with the transfer portal, and when their defense in the secondary, they didn't have anything going. They had a bunch of guys exit before that game even happened. So they were down like 5 defenders in the secondary alone when that game, before the game even started. And then SMU, nobody really took SMU very, very serious because it was their first time in the ACC. They didn't really have the hardest schedule ever. And Clemson, handled them for most of the game until they kind of started slowly clawing their way back into it. Now, he does have 2 ACC championships, but again, he doesn't have that marquee, top 10 type of win or big time, prime time type of win under his belt. Maybe he will get one this year, and I think that's one that he has the talent to do so, and he now has the team to do so. But what I'm saying is, remember back when he threw interceptions against like Charleston Southern, and he seemed to have had some struggles here and there against teams. It's like, why is he doing these things when he would run, 20 yards backwards to go 5 yards forwards, and just seemed to be doing things like third down and medium. He would run out of bounds instead of turning upfield. Now, he's gotten better in all those areas, really. But there was a time where, I was very frustrated with him. I know the fan base was very frustrated with Cade. Like he really wasn't. Some people would even say he maybe wasn't even any better than DJ, which is kind of shocking to think back all the emotions and the ups and downs we've gone through with Cade. But he's really settled into his own, and now he's the true leader of the team, and he's now the veteran guy. This is his last season, his last hurrah, his last push to get into the national championship contention in that game. But, there could have been many opportunities where the fan base turned on, not only the fan base, but where the locker room could have turned on him. Why doesn't that happen so much at Clemson, or really at all under Dabo Swinney? And I think that's really all goes back to, the culture. I could never imagine chaos like that where the locker room would say, hey, get out. They would tell their star quarterback, their starting quarterback, we don't want you. We'd rather go with someone that we don't even know or hasn't had any kind of success at all. Now, Jalen Milroe has had success. Has he been the best quarterback in the nation? No, that's for sure. But Clemson builds a culture that is different than a lot of others out there. Now, we talk about Clemson family and things like that, and sometimes it can seem a little cheesy, but that's true behind what Dabo is prioritizing. Leadership, accountability, family, chemistry. Players don't just come to Clemson to win a lot of games. Now, that is something that they do. But it is less about having that professional mindset. They're still professionals, more about having that brotherhood. And, they recently landed a recruit who also mentioned that brotherhood was a big deal to him in Gordon Sellers. So think back around, Clemson's quarterback history. Trevor Lawrence was a generational talent, but he was a leader that had the entire team's respect. Woody Dantzler, entire team's respect. Kelly Bryant, the entire team's respect. Even when Kelly Bryant transferred out, a handful of guys went to go see him in his spring game at Missouri. And honestly, I would even say Deshaun Watson. Now, we don't know what he did or didn't do. At least I don't know what he did or didn't do behind the scenes. Whatever it was, if he did anything wrong, I didn't know about it. And I felt like he carried himself very well while he was here at Clemson. And it wasn't until he got into the professional world, started making a lot of money, that he started to change. But something was different about Deshaun while he was here at Clemson that he has. I would love for him to come back and kind of figure out himself. But I think that chapter is already gone, right? That book is already passed. But Cade Klubnick has had ups and downs. And, you know, his teammates have stuck by him. His coaching staff has stuck by him. And there's no accident behind that. Dabo fosters an environment where players lift each other up instead of tearing each other down. As Dabo likes to say, this world will shine you up or grind you up. And I think he really focuses on making sure your teammates are the ones that are lifting each other up instead of tearing each other down. In contrast, we're seeing what happened at Alabama, or what the rumors are at Alabama, is that there's a void there. You have Kalen DeBoer. He's finding his footing, but Nick Saban is no longer there. And some of the culture really isn't about building each other up and supporting each other. Clemson's stability, meanwhile, keeps the team very stable. And he's been preaching this message of love, faith, and football and family for years, for decades. And that's why I feel Clemson avoids these types of articles. Now, some Alabama fans may say, well, look what the tough love got us. It got us a bunch of national championships. That is true. But Clemson has shown that they can do it in a different way, with a different kind of approach, and still land some big-time NFL talent, big-time first-round draft picks, and not only make it to the postseason, but make it to the postseason more consistently than most, and win national championships themselves in their own way. So I think both approaches work. Was Nick Saban definitely a dynasty? Oh, yes, that's for sure. But I like that there's no drama. I like that while it might make it easier for me as a talking head here to be able to do another podcast when some drama goes on, I could probably turn, one piece of drama into like 5 podcasts. But it is kind of nice to know that Clemson is not having to deal with that, especially right now when there's so many other things that are going on in the national media when it comes to the disagreements that we have as a nation, disagreements that we have against conferences, and how we want college football to go. Speaking of college football, Dabo Swinney has recently come out and said that he thinks a super league is inevitable and why fans should actually be excited about it. I will tell you that I'm excited about it because I also predicted this years ago, that I felt like this was the best way out of NIL the way it is right now, is to get a super league and to get away from government legislation. We'll talk about that coming up next right here on Locked On Clemson. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller and subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and even Avowed. As easily as you stream your favorite shows, it's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV stick. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscription services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and so much more. Play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. Already have a console with a Fire TV Stick device is more affordable and easier to travel with, along with taking your kids' games wherever they want to plug it in. You can take it with you. That's what I love. I'm not lugging around my Xbox at all. I'm going to take that Fire TV Stick 4K. Head over to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Let's talk about the future of college football. Dabo Swinney dropped a bombshell recently, really talking about what he thinks is the future of college football, and it all revolves around a super league and how a 40, 50 team league, now I predicted a 60 team league personally, but how it's not just inevitable, Dabo Swinney says, it's necessary. In an interview with ESPN, he said that the current model is bloated has bloated conferences and unsustainable schedules, and it is on its last legs. He feels like that there will be major realignment in 2031 or before. When Clemson's new ACC deal expires, the dominoes will start to fall. Now, I think this is huge because it's coming from Dabo Swinney, and a lot of things that he's said over the years, even the stuff that he was mocked about, has eventually come true. And I think that Clemson is perfectly positioned to thrive in a super league like what Dabo Swinney is talking about. I feel as if that's the next best step for Clemson, for all of college football in general. I don't like the split up we have with college football and the different conferences. I don't like that, you're judged by the schedule you play, but because of the conference you're in, you're stuck to that kind of those teams that you play year in and year out. And it's going to make it harder and harder because of competition to jump to different leagues. Now, thankfully, Clemson still has some out of conference schedule games that are with the SEC, and they still have those rivals, but it's going to be more difficult as the seasons go on, because teams don't want to give teams that are not in their conference, or conferences don't want to give other conferences any kind of leeway or any kind of opportunity to look better than their own conference, right? There's always that competition between conferences, and it's getting worse. Now, I thought it was interesting that Dabo Swinney mentioned about Clemson's new or when the ACC deal expires, because we know that right now Clemson got the better end of the agreement, or the revenue generation or contract that was with the ACC, because it's tied directly into viewership and into revenue. Then the Tigers are going to be able to make more money than the other ACC brands, and they're going to be able to be competitive with the top brands in college football. Now, I think Clemson typically averages, a handful of fans every single game. I mean, they're going to bring in millions, like 6.2 or more, maybe even up into the 10 million viewers every single game, outpacing a lot of other conferences and a lot of bigger teams in, what they say, not bigger teams, but maybe bigger market teams out there. SEC teams, Big Ten teams, Clemson is probably not above the median when it comes to viewership. And that's a lot of leverage when it comes to, a super league that could possibly form. Now, Dabo Swinney's vision for the Super League kind of goes back into the NFL. Clemson playing, their annual games against big time rivals that are really wanting to play college football and wanting to play at, a high level. What I think should happen is that there should be some sort of buy-in. You have this major conference, you have this Super League that is backed by the television networks. And that Super League is governed by an independent body, not the government. And then teams buy into that league. Now, if you're serious about college football, you will pay $100 million, let's say. I'm just saying this as a for example. But every team that wants to be in this league has to put up $100 million, be a part of this league. You get about 60, say, teams, and you have a big war chest there for your conference just starting out. And then, let's say that there's some sort of, this would be my idea, would be there's some sort of relegation that comes into play. If you're a league, or you're a team in the league that's not keeping pace, that's not investing at the same rate as other teams, then, and you're losing a lot and you're losing consistently. Let's say you lose, you're in the bottom 10% 3 years in a row, possibly you get moved out for another university that's able to move in and give their chance to it. Now, I don't know if that will be sustainable, because if the teams that are left out of the Super League and can't buy in will possibly go back to kind of what you would think more of a traditional college football, where you're just having, players play for your university and they're not making a ton of money, and maybe the teams just aren't able to even compete at all. But I do think that Clemson is going to be in the mix for a Super League. There's no reason why they shouldn't. They'll be playing games against South Carolina, Georgia, Florida State. Maybe they could even get more games with Auburn. You won't have to be stuck in the conference that you're in, because you'll be part of the Super League. You could possibly have different divisions, and I think it would be a fan's dream, to be honest with you. And if you get regional games, if you get regional conferences or regional divisions, then that will help with the travel costs. That will boost recruiting, and the types of teams that are involved in a Super League like this is going to just pack out the stadium and bring even more energy. We talk about having the best of the SEC come and visit Clemson, and how much of a great atmosphere that would be for the Tigers and for Clemson. But think about if it wasn't just the SEC, if it was the best teams from the Big 12, the best teams from the Big 10, best teams from the SEC, all rotating through in Clemson, and Clemson also traveling as well. So you can get opportunities to go see those, stadiums, which would be, I think, amazing. And it'd be a huge boost to college football. College football has an opportunity really in front of them if they can get this together and have some true leadership and build a true conference that includes all of the big players of college football and all the big universities across the country. I do think that there is a huge following there that could potentially rival the NFL, because there's you pick your NFL team, but nobody has like an emotional tie to an NFL team like they do to a college. A lot of people go and attend these colleges. They graduate from these colleges. They have the ring. They have, the diploma on their wall like I do, and the ring on their hand like I do. And they are tied and rabid fans, more so even than NFL. And so I feel like that there is some untapped potential here with college football if they can gather everything together and figure out a way to have a super league. So Clemson's connection and being in the location that they're in, I think, is good. It'll be an anchor for them to be possibly in a southeastern division when a super league all comes to play. Now, recently I saw a Twitter article or a post where they were talking about Kentucky just came out and has turned their athletic departments into an LLC, or their athletic program into an LLC. And it's separate from the university. I also feel like that is the next step for college football too. And I'll probably dive into that more in another podcast, but I do feel as if college athletics has got to continue to thrive. They've got to get away from being tied to the university to the point where it's owned by a state entity, and those state entities are being governed by legislation through lawyers and through the Supreme Court. You've got to get away from that if you're going to have true competition, if you're going to have an elite level, elite league out there that it is fair for the football players and for the different teams that are involved. You have to get away from being out legislated by these crazy judges and lawyers that are out there that are just willing to just basically upend any kind of rules you could possibly want by saying this is unfair, that's unfair, this is unfair. Do this, then you have to do that. And you can't have a competitive league if you get lawyers and judges involved who want to make everything equal, because sports are not going to be fair to every single person. You have to have a winner. You have to have a loser. And that's not the case when you're trying to legislate things in your country. But when it comes to an athletic competition, you have to set black and white boundaries and rules, and have to have some things that, maybe just truly aren't fair to the person, but this is the rule we're going to have for this game and this competition. And what we're having is, if you're going to continue down this route of legislation, we're already seeing it. You're not just going to be able to get 4 years of competition. You're going to have to play. You're going to be able to play 5, maybe even 6, So there's a lot of rules that can't even be put into place. You're not going to be able to do certain things if you still fall under that arm of being backed by a state entity. And so separating yourself into an LLC as a university or as an athletic department, I think, is a smart thing to do going forward. Kentucky seems to have already done it. I think Clemson and other places will fall in line as well. Haven't heard anything specifically about that, but I do feel like that is a possibility, and it's a high possibility for me. Super League, number one thing that's going to be, but I also think forming an LLC, and I'll say this, forming an LLC and buying the rights to the branding. Imagine that, an LLC that is your football program buying the rights of your brand of your university. And that's how they're tied together. That's what I see in the future for college football. All right, next up, we're going to talk about Lane Kiffin roasting Miami's NIL mess, and how this is, again, a reminder of the gold standard of Clemson University. Hey, the NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. You can go right now and join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, and you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting easy. You can bet on games, players, and even sign up for bonus bets when you get an account. You can dive into player props. You can get into specific things like how many steals is a player going to get, how many three-pointers is a player going to get, how many assists and blocks, and so many things to keep you going. And even in the middle of a game, you can go in there and check out and see the different competitions that they have going on. So many ways to play and so many ways to win. And plus, you can also, once you win, you get your money quickly so you can stay in the action and get right back into it. So don't miss out. First $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. So head over to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. I wanted to wrap up today's show, a little bit of a variety show. Some of these articles that I'm seeing out there really aren't super related to Clemson, but I think that they are a good reminder to Clemson fans of kind of what we have and what other teams are having to deal with. And one of those things is a rival in the ACC and good old-fashioned shade from Lane Kiffin. The Ole Miss coach took to social media and a podcast to talk about Miami's NIL strategy, mocking them for paying former Georgia quarterback Carson Beck over $4 million in NIL deals. And, he still already has some issues because he's in all these girls' DMs, and now he's lost his girlfriend that he had at Miami. A lot of drama there from this player, and he really wasn't that good of a player when he was at Georgia, and Lane Kiffin didn't hold back either. He said, did they even watch him play last year? Ouch. For context, Carson Beck threw 12 interceptions in a 6-game stretch, and including a brutal performance against Ole Miss where he looked really lost. And yet Miami opened up the checkbook and wrote it and sparked a lot of chaos, not just in Coral Gables, but in Tennessee, where he originally was, had rumors of transferring there too, but also Georgia as well. But I tell you, that's why Clemson should be grateful for, or Clemson fans should be grateful for Clemson's NIL strategy and how Dabo Swinney kind of takes a slow and cautious and methodical approach against the NIL. I like what he started doing, and he all started with paying the players, which is originally how it was supposed to be, was to pay players who were already on your team for different kind of marketing and NIL activities. And Clemson started with the NIL activities, and that quickly turned into, okay, you don't necessarily have to do NIL activities, which is crazy because that's really what it's all about. But it turned into acceptance of, if you're on the team, you can get paid, but if you're not on the team, you shouldn't, because that would be tampering, right? Dabo started with a culture first approach and paying his players that were already on his team first. And that's why you see that they don't have a ton of starters or impact players that are leaving the university, because they're getting paid, and they're getting paid well for their services and for, playing their position. I think starting with retention is a really good idea. Unlike Miami, Clemson is not going out there throwing millions of dollars to players who have never put their jersey on and who are very risky and who can bring a lot of baggage and drama. They focus on signing deals and that align with the program's values. Very logical businesses do this, and they try to have team-oriented endorsements, sustainable partnerships with businesses, and the NIL Collective 110 Society has raised millions of dollars, but also they've spread it across the roster and not just thrown everything in the kitchen sink at one single player. And you do see that at other universities where they're just throwing all their money at one single player. Now, Clemson is definitely paying their star players more than others. That's for sure. You have to kind of align with the value to the team. Now, everybody on the team is in their own way valuable, but the quarterback is obviously making more money than most. And running back, wide receivers, those skill positions that are the flashy ones are probably making more than some of your offensive linemen. And that is how it is in professional world as well. So I think that Dabo starting out with paying players for retention was a good start. And then he started to get involved in paying freshmen, not paying them to come be on the team or to commit, because that would be against the rules. But once they did commit, once they did sign their letter of intent, once they did get enrolled into the university, they were paid. So, a lot of people say, well, Dabo doesn't pay players. No, he does. He pays the players that are currently on his team. Well, Dabo doesn't pay brand new recruits from high school. Yes, he does, but he does so in a way that I think is the way the rules were intended, which is once you're on the team, no matter if you're a senior or a freshman, you're going to get some sort of NIL package that is appropriate for your level of talent. And I think that's why Clemson has had no drama in the offseason. Relatively limited, if any, drama in NIL. And they definitely haven't had any kind of like culture issues so far. Dabo, as of this year, first time ever, has gone into the transfer portal and kind of been a little bit more purposeful. And I think that you have to do so with some money backing you up as well, because when you go into the transfer portal, these guys know that not only that everybody knows that they're looking for playing time, but the players also know that you need somebody of their skill set. Otherwise, you wouldn't be even looking at them at all. You're not looking to develop them because they're already, been in college football for at least 1 year. So really, you're looking for someone who can come in and start right away. Will Helt, Jeremiah Alexander, Tristan Smith. These are guys that are also getting paid by Clemson. They're also getting paid by, 110 Society, but they are guys who have earned, the ability to demand a certain price. Now, are they making as much as the superstars who are returning players? Probably not. But I think that Dabo is doing the right thing by making it as fair and equitable as possible based on the value that is brought to the team and the impact that you have on the roster. Miami's mistake kind of, to me, shows what happens when you just blank check somebody. $4 million to a quarterback who really kind of struggled and looks goofy as all get out. That, to me, is just bad business. It's a recipe for drama, and they already have it. Imagine the resentment from other players who are not involved in the drama, who have been there and put in the hard work. Clemson avoids this by prioritizing people who buy in and are all into the culture and not just making a ton of money. Now, I know you got to pay a quarterback for sure. And hey, who knows if Clemson fizzles out on these backup quarterbacks that they have, like Christopher Vizina and some of these guys in the recruiting that are committed to Clemson coming in for next season. If all that fizzles out, then maybe Clemson's in the mix to get a quarterback as well. That would be a very expensive pickup, but I think Clemson will do so and be very calculated with it as well, and not just throw a bunch of money to anybody, especially somebody who has kind of struggled like Carson Beck. Guys like Phil Maffa, Barrett Carter, those are guys that came and stayed and that they benefited from that retention type strategy that Dabo Swinney has, and they continued to get better and stayed loyal to the university. Here to not only win, but to grow as men and develop themselves. So I can get where Lane Kiffin is roasting Miami, and they deserve it for sure, because they're not alone. There's a lot of other teams out there too that have spent a lot of money and have really had no success with it. Texas A&M is another team that I've thought about that is spending a ton of money and it's really not working out for them. So I like where Dabo Swinney's going, even though it definitely hurts because you don't have a ton of, drama to talk about when it comes to a podcast. But maybe we can think about other things to talk about while we wait and sit on our hands for the fall and college football. Hey, thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Portal Show. Brian Smith and his latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the first and most informed fan of the rapid changes of college football and the portal landscape. Find the portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you at the top of the hill.